Perfect. And the first thing I want to do is hop into, actually, yeah, I will hop into this site first and we'll do this. Okay. Yes. All right. So as I mentioned, we have got some new things coming next weekend. So first pieces are what will come out in the new release next weekend. The first bit is around budget forecasting with fiscal year. So a lot of folks have asked us to be able to change the timing, the deadlines on budget reporting. So there's a lot of functionality in here. This hits like 4 or 5 use cases. So really think about what you would like the controls of the budget to do, and let's see if this hits it for any of you. So first, generate budget forecast. I don't know, can we see that okay? The top of my screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Generate budget forecast as of, you can now pick a date. So some folks said, I don't want to pick a starting date until next year, or I just want to show them from X date on, or for the first time ever, you're allowed to go backwards. So if you wanted to pick a budget date in the past and show everything from Q4, even though Q4 has already started, you can do that. So you can select a budget date. The other piece is in reporting options. You will see that under reporting period, if you click that, normally we say quarterly, monthly, or yearly. Now you can choose fiscal year. When you choose fiscal year, you can say the fiscal year starts in, you can select the month, and it automatically assumes the first of that month. So that's the one restriction. You can then save these settings and it will always save in your cache, right? But you can choose this to be different across clients. So if by chance you have municipalities that are a July 1 start or a September 1 start, you can set the date for that company to be set there, and for other companies to be set at the beginning of the year, etc. So you can control the fiscal date. We know for sure all of our Aussie partners, many UK folks have asked for this, and then folks that are using, again, selling to municipalities, etc., are interested in this. So the other piece is that in the spreadsheet view, we now have a total cost column. So some folks have asked for that, that we add up the total cost along the way. And then you can also, as we mentioned, start the budget forecast so that it includes the full fiscal year. So if you backdate to the beginning of 2022, you would get the full fiscal year budget instead of looking like a partial year.
So I have questions about the backdate.
Yeah.
Because of the way we handle assets, an asset gets retired out of the system. Are we still going to show it in a backdated budget? I never assumed we would. I never saw this feature coming, so I'm wondering what's going to happen. So if an MSP retires the asset, right, it goes away in our system generally.
I think it is probably the recommendations as what is backdated, because I'm not seeing any assets show up in the, right, if they've already addressed the asset. So versus not scheduled.
So if they replace an asset without putting it in a recommendation, it's just going to disappear.
Well, and I think the way Nick explained it to me is if it was overdue and still should have landed in the fiscal year, it'll push it to the fiscal year. These overdues are probably from before 2022 type of thing. So anything left to be budgeted this year is my understanding of that. We'll make sure there's some language around it, but I think that, if it's gone, it's gone, right? If it's already green, we don't know about it. But if it's still in the overdue column, it can still land into the budget.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm going to hop out of that version and into this branch. And I'm going to jump into the asset first, although you should note that we're seeing some different dashboard pieces, but we're going to come back to that. I'm going to go into the asset list. There's an important caveat for this. We're doing this first with ConnectWise as your primary integration. So this will go out with a beta flag as we're testing this for folks who use ConnectWise as a primary integration. Say it with me one more time. ConnectWise as a primary integration. Guess what? That's exactly how I taught high school math, where I repeated.
Wait, does this work with Autotask?
And Alex was the same kid I had in class. Alex Farley, one more time.
I was doing that for everybody else's benefit. I just wanted to
Somebody
make sure we
mute
understood.
Mute that guy.
Appreciate that. So, and like we said, if you have ConnectWise as your primary integration and you are in an asset, if you create a ticket, you will now have the ability to, I must be in the wrong one. Oh, that's why I am in the wrong one. I don't have ConnectWise as my primary integration. This one, please hold. I think this is the one I needed to be in.
So now we know what happens if you do it with IT Glue as your primary integration.
I was just gonna ask that question, what about IT Glue?
Yeah, no dice, doesn't happen. When you select your service board, you are also allowed to select your assigned contact. So you can actually select your user. If, as we just saw, ConnectWise is your primary integration. That was probably a good time to do a counterexample anyway, to show exactly, like, I'm not seeing it. That's because IT Glue was my primary, not my primary integration, or was my primary. So let's go back to the dashboard. So, couple things. First, the filters are now locked at the top like this. They used to be in this top bar. You can hide the filters, get yourself some more space, right? You can turn the filters on. And if I select servers and workstations, for example, you saw that my dashboard updated. You can see my filter is green, but now that persists. So when I go to the asset list, because it's locked at the top, it's already preset with those filters locked. It'll show you it's here. If by chance you've hidden them, it's still going to show you green filter in the top right that you have two filters turned on. But this way you can hold filters across your reporting. So we had lots of folks asking for that. And this is an attempt to make that consistent across all of our pages. So filtering, move to the top. Again, you can hide it if you don't use the filters. Always bring it back. Get yourself as much real estate as possible. The different look on the dashboard here is one, you might notice, so where did, there's normally a tile here with tech debt. And here's a brand new tile of recommendations along with the status. So we're doing two things. First, we're doing three things. I'm a liar. Okay, first, we're adding new dashboard tiles. I'll show you a couple of them right now. Second, we are allowing you to customize the dashboard. And third, we're allowing you to create dashboards for different security groups. So you could create a customer facing dashboard tile that you could share with your customers that doesn't have tech debt on it, for example. Top right, edit icon. It's now going to let me edit my dashboard tiles because I'm a tenant admin. Hopefully you saw at the bottom that I just got a Smileback CSAT tile and a total tech debt tile. I can drag this around and put my tiles wherever I want. So those of you that want to see, we can move our budget forecast over here. I'll make this all over the place. I'll do a demo and not be able to chase down my missing data tile. So you can select the tiles that you want to show. You can hide from views the ones you don't want to show. So when I save this, it will hide my tech debt tile. And then I also have the ability to select a security group. So at the top here, I can do a few things. I can create a view for my company and just set that as the default view. Again, I could create a tile that would be for my customers. So you might not want your customers to see, I don't know, their data quality score, their tech debt, etc. You could hide that from their view. And you can also create a view within your company. So everybody's going to get these tiles, or you can create one for your particular user group. questions or use cases around that? People have been asking for customized dashboards for quite a while. Like I said, we're adding recommendations. We are adding the smile back score. And the other tile that we're adding is not coming to me at the moment, but I'll remember in a minute. So we're adding another tile right out of the gate as well. So comments or questions on that? Did something pop up in the chat or no?
Nope, we're good. Probably
Okay.
just positives.
What was the
Probably should
time
have
frame?
the ticket data tile, yeah.
Oh, it's the Microsoft Secure Score tile is the next one that's coming. So,
And we'll get you other things as we go, so keep your ideas coming.
Or what was, I didn't hear you say the time frame. Maybe you said it. I jumped on a little late.
oh yeah, these will be out at the end of next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Marnie, with the customization of tiles, would we be able to determine how many months the total technology debt is calculating?
We're not yet. So that tech debt still, like, we haven't changed that tech debt tile yet. But so you would want to control that window then in the same way that you can control the budget forecast, I assume.
I think so.
So we don't have that. That is not in this release for sure. Good. Glad I get some nices in the chat. That always helps. We are updating our onboarding pieces. So right now, we have the onboarding checklist. This is going to be, instead of a checklist now, it'll be Kanban style, like our recommendation roadmap. So most of you have been in for quite a while and don't need the Kanban style view because you've already onboarded, but we will have the ability to assign you cards and you can move them and ship them and see what's updated, and the knowledge base will live in there as well. So when we move to you're up here, it can get you the video that you'll need to do the next step in onboarding. So we're hoping to make onboarding a little easier with that. Let's see, which of the sites am I in? The other piece, this definitely impacts those of you that have many, many companies. I don't know which site I'm supposed to be in, so we'll just try this one and see how we go. Actually, I don't think it's either because none of them are active integrations, but in here, if I go to Microsoft, we are working at auto matching for you. So normally, for example, if you had Microsoft 365 integration, and obviously I would have to go in and manually match my LCI company name with my Microsoft tenant name. It will now automatically match on exact match. So if your names happen to be exactly the same, we can auto populate, which basically means anytime you do an integration, that if they're the identical name, it'll match for you. If they're not identical, we don't have any like quick search to guess right now, but if they're identical matches, you should be set on that. So again, if you have lots of clients or you go from the 50 client bucket to the 100 client bucket and you suddenly have 50 new mappings to do, it should make a little bit easier for you to do. So those are all of the pieces that should be coming out next weekend. So I know I let probably 6 people in the waiting room while we were chatting. So let me just refresh. So they are, if ConnectWise is your primary integration, you'll be able to add a primary contact to the ticket. We now in budget forecasting have all of the fiscal year and fiscal year right here, right? So you're able to set fiscal year for budgets. You can generate a budget forecast of anything that was previously in overdue. It'll land in the new budget piece. The report builder will always hold the date of the budget. So even though like whatever you set, that'll lock in report builder as well. You'll have the filter at the top of the boards. So in the dashboard, we showed that you had the filter at the top. So these will hold true across all of your clients. The customized dashboard, including 3 new tiles, recommendations, CSAT with Smileback and the Microsoft Secure Score. Company mapping will auto match, and the onboarding will be more Jira or Kanban board style. Now, that's not all for Q4. That's just the first month of Q4, because that's how our developers roll. So what else? What else have you won by being a happy life cycler? So there will be some more dashboard tiles, including one that will include headlines. So headlines is going to be some notifications around things like you have contracts coming due. Right now, if you want to find out when a contract's coming due, you have to dig into that customer, you have to click on contracts, and you have to look for red. So we want to bring that to the forefront so you don't have to go look for that. If you remember, because Alex and I don't just sit around making this stuff up. I mean, sometimes, but most of the time it's because we've talked on this call, right? If you remember, a couple months ago, we asked what types of notifications or alerts would you like to get? And we took all of that feedback and any of the data that we already have from those requests that you made is the first step in what they're going to put in the headline tile. So again, it might be what contracts are new, or now coming due. How many, do I have a QBR coming up in the next 3 weeks? Do I have something that's been auto scheduled, but I don't have scheduled yet? So we're going to start giving you those pieces that right now you can get in the system, but have to go look for it. Maybe it's been 3 months since you've done an assessment, that type of thing. Hoodoo is on the list. So the Hoodoo integration, I know several of you are waiting to leave another provider so you can, when Lifecycle Insights has Hoodoo, so that's on the map. Report Locker, 2 things with Report Locker. The first will be, think about assessments. We have templates and then we run an event against an assessment, a template, right? That's how Report Locker will work, where the template in Report Locker really is a template and you can run an event against that. They're also hoping to get in the ability to secure an individual assessment event. So this would mean I could send my client to do a single assessment, and instead of them seeing all the assessments for themselves, you could give them or a tier 1 tech or someone access to a single event just to focus on all of the, instead of having to scroll through a ton of assessment events, you'd be able to say, I want to secure this one so that folks know we're working on this one. That also means that when we create that ability to lock an event, that we store it and it'll automatically store the Word doc without you having to go place it over there and say, this is point in time. The link will always be live, because it's a link and it's always live. But when you put something in the locker, it will save it as point in time. And then one more thing, and that is we are building the ability to have an EU data instance. And most of you are not in EU since you're on this call right now. But when we do that, that gives us the ability to have multiple instances at the same time. It'll help with, of course, if, one instance of AWS goes down, we can quickly spin it up in another instance. But it gives some more stability around that. And then we have a lot of folks hanging out in Germany that have been asking us if we can have an instance. And so if you're listening to this, and I know who you are, I know you've been waiting to hear that news. So that is what we have coming for Q4. And then we, of course, always have insights into where we're aiming for Q1, but that's what they're really hoping to get out the door by the end of the year. So questions, comments, complaints, or criticisms? Also, rousing support is always welcome. Claps, I like it. Thank you. Love it all. Excellent. Excellent, excellent.
Marnie, I have an obscure question, I think,
Sure.
but I'll still ask. The work that you guys did for fiscal year, does that affect anything with recurring items on recommendations? So if I want to sell business premium Microsoft licensing, I put it as a recurring item and it calculates the total price as the 12-year price today.
Right. So I think you would still want to change the end date of that for the budgeting. But I do know what you're talking about, especially because we just got another ticket in there, but we don't have the notion of stopping that recurring cost, which is what I think you're asking about. Yeah.
Is that, I think my question might be similar. I just had a scenario where we had a contract that will be canceled at the end of October here, right? And when you look at the 12-month budget, 2 months from now, it still had the same cost in there. And so is that along the same lines? Is there some opportunity?
That's the same idea of what he's thinking. So you need to go into that contract and put the end date so it stops for sure. But I think that is step one in being able to bracket it, right? And say like, we want this time frame instead of extending the budget beyond there. But I'll make note. I don't think, Greg, that they've accounted for that yet. Scott, I think the same, but I will double check.
Because of course, ConnectWise, right, said the new updated cost, even though the cancellation was in the future, right? And so it was a reflection.
Yep. Bracketed contract dates. Nope, that makes sense. We don't have anything new with Line Guard. Another idea to roll around is the ability to maybe keep a recent report set of data. Oh, gotcha. So Alex, I think that that might be a good use case to talk about in Report Locker, because we're talking about when to save it. I know when we first brainstormed it, we talked about the idea of like this one's in pending. So I'm saving progress on it, but it's not locked. So they're saved as in I like where it is. But then when you're done, which may be 7 days after you've done it or 14 days after you've done it, you can lock it so that you would have to do something demonstrative to edit that data. So I think they're actually contemplating that for that very reason, right? You might have missed something and have to go edit it after you've delivered it, right? You might want to adjust something. Am I making sense? Is that what you're thinking with your comment?
So when a lot of times what happens, well, not all the time, hopefully I try to make sure, but you're in there, you're creating the report and you're setting up stuff and you're going through, and then you finish it and I go and it's almost like, and maybe I'm just missing something here. It's almost like when I want to go to present the thing, I don't necessarily have it up in the reports. Like I do this report a week in advance or whatever and send it to the client and they get it. And then I'd have to go back in and actually, truthfully, it's a lot of times why I don't actually use the presentation tool, because I don't actually make it live then. I end up just kind of presenting off of the, off of the PDF or whatever else, or I'll use Lifecycle. I'll just scroll through and click through things as I want to instead of the actual presentation mode, because that instance of that report that I saved for this QBR at this time isn't there anymore. Now, my workaround is I'll sometimes save it as a template and then delete it myself so that it's there and kind of all, for the most part, set up. But obviously that's not ideal. That's the issue I'm trying to resolve, basically.
And your point in there of like it's a bunch of data to save, that's why we didn't we can't save like multiple iterations of the same thing a ton of times. But I will mention the notion of like caching for a set number of days, because that is exactly the conversation we have with the developers of if that live link is ever just point in time, we would have to save all of the data all of the time, replicated constantly.
Yeah, no, I get, and that's what I mean. I get that there's a lot to that, so it might not necessarily work, but that's why I was like, I don't know, maybe a shortcut. I mean, it's even one of those things where, and it's happened a few times where I did the whole thing and then I go and for whatever reason I decide I'm going to close this thing and I go to send it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed that. And I'm going in there and recreating the whole thing and doing and that's like within minutes. So I'm like, hey, heck, I would even take maybe 24 hours I'd be good with. Like something that just provides the accidental mistake, and now I got to spend 15 minutes making this thing again.
So I know that is being contemplated, like I said, for the download, but I'll have to just see if my guess will be, let's try it with the download first. Because the notion is like save in progress versus locked. And just like when you delete, you'd have to really do something to unlock it. I think if we learn lessons about how often are people unlocking, right? That'll give us
Sure.
some data on if every time something's been locked, no one has ever opened it again after 24 hours, then maybe we could do a 24-hour something. If we
Yep.
find people are unlocking it like 365 days later, then first we'll poke them in the eye, and then second we'll
Yep.
say like,
No,
maybe we don't have a
I
solution for that.
completely understand. I completely understand that there's certainly a lot of complexity around this. I get it.
But I think, at least I think we're contemplating the
Sure.
first step of that. And I'm glad that it wasn't like, clearly it's a use case that we need to consider for sure. Any other comments on anything?
The one thing that's kind of lingering on my wish list is visibility to the risk item associated with its recommendation in the recommendation list.
Okay,
You know what I mean? So if there was a column that said risk, or just a, somewhere there was a link to it that said this recommendation is associated with this risk
Yep,
item.
yep.
It goes, and
So-
I know it kind of goes the other way. The button that you just added recently that says create a recommendation out of a risk item is awesome.
Yeah.
I'll go the other
Yeah,
way
so
too.
you want to be able to see it so that, so first, for folks that don't know this, in the asset list, you can already see that, right? So you can add a column already. This is how you can tell them in a demo site when it's going to take an hour to load. So in asset, let me just turn off some columns. You can already see, right, if a recommendation has been added to an asset, but I think you're asking the same thing for assessment risk items. Now in, Alex, I feel like you showed this the other day.
What are you looking for?
Poke around. I think it was item detail. To associate a recommendation to a risk item.
I
And
mean,
you
you
just
can
gotta
build a new
use-
recommendation from here, and
Just
that's
check
one of the
off.
things that we've been looking at.
Yeah, it was the reverse of like how, I think here, if we added another
Check the box.
Yeah, check the box. On the left of the item, of the risk item. There you go.
Yeah.
There it
Yeah,
is.
You can
that's how
create
you
from
create a
here.
recommendation, but you would want the recommendation linked here to say this is.
I think we need, I was talking about this with another partner this morning, and I think we need manageable columns here, Marnie. And we need to list the recommendation and tickets, like just the little pills that show,
Yeah.
hey, this has 4 tickets open with it.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to be able to show tickets by status, because the point that the customer made to me this morning was that if they could see in one place, this has a recommendation, the one below it has a ticket and it's open, we haven't addressed it yet. Then they know walking into a QBR, hey, we haven't fixed something that maybe we should have fixed by now.
So that does remind me, one of the tiles they're looking at building is a ticket summary, so that you would know all of the tickets that were created in this company from Lifecycle. So it wouldn't pull all of the tickets that are for this company, but this way you wouldn't have to go look in the assets themselves, in the recommendations, or in the assessment. You would just have a summary of these are the tickets along with the status. So that's not exactly this. It's a step in the right direction toward that, I think.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about it from if you go to the recommendations item there, right? And that's where I'd want to see there's a recommendation.
Oh, the risk of the item.
Right. This is where I want to see there's a risk item, the risk item that's tied to a particular recommendation.
Now, would that make sense to have that in? Oh, yep, okay.
Yeah, one of the columns there, or
One of the columns here, because
Yep.
we've already got managed columns here. So if we could add that data here, and the reality of it is you're not gonna print out the full card view. So I think adding that as a column in here would make sense.
exactly my thought.
Same for tickets.
Same for tickets, okay. Alex, does that get the use case you were talking to this morning too, or is there someplace else?
No, it doesn't, because what we need to see is the failed assessment items all in one place to make sure they all have at least a ticket or a recommendation attached to them. They might be getting fixed on a ticket, they might be getting fixed on an assessment, but none of the pages that we do this on, and it might, the fix might be that we go to the assessment analytics by customer page and redo that page, because that has become, with this, some of these new views we have in the other place, it's become almost obsolete. Right, we have a link to recommendation elsewhere. Summary is okay, item detail exposure is okay, but if we somewhere in here gave that data, it might be equally useful. But we need to be able to show them all of the
Tickets and recommendations associated to the assessment item.
yeah.
That reminds me, somebody asked the other day, I want to show, you know, the progress of an assessment, but I wanted to select the assessment and they did not realize that you could change the events in here. So since we got a ticket on it, I'll bring it out. But if you want to just show these 3 assessments and show, well, of course, those are all scored the exact same way. So that's going to be completely disinteresting. Let's try another. Let's try this. Right. If I wanted to show progression on scores here
Mhm.
over time, because the assessment comparison report shows 2 assessments, this one can show unlimited by category and by overall template. And to Alex's point, we don't see folks clicking in here so much, especially now that we've got the item detail view, you know, in the assessment event tab, that this is still an option for folks. Now, that said, Greg, I know you guys use, you use these views quite a bit more. Jeff, Crewwho is definitely one of the CSET tools that we have. As a matter of fact, I emailed them the other day to see if they'd be interested in chatting API. And he has talked to me before, so.
All
Yeah.
right.
Anything else top of mind? Anything from the last release, which was only 2 weeks ago, believe it or not, and we're already showing more things.
Is it a bug or, oh, go ahead.
For the assessments, when you create an assessment, you add a tag to that assessment. I noticed that across the board, no matter who that assessment is for, those same tags are still associated with that assessment.
Correct. The tag is associated to the item, regardless of where the item is. So
Okay.
not in that particular template. It's actually the item that holds that tag.
Okay. And that's across the board on all the items and that are in any one of those.
Correct.
Got
So if you had a specific item for a specific client that you needed to be different, you would want to create a copy of that item and rename it unique to a client.
Got it. Okay.
Greg, did you have a question?
Is it a bug or a feature that in the roadmap view, I can't drag something that was future oriented into past due? Are you trying to not let me drag a card into past due on purpose, or is it a bug?
I haven't seen that issue. So if you put in a use case in a ticket,
Sure.
we'll practice and see what it is and just dig in and see if maybe there was an asset or something that was getting it stuck. Because I don't know the answer to that right out of the gate. Other pieces.
Any thought in that view to be able to switch it from quarters to years, columns?
Hadn't been asked that, but you would kind of want to use the same, are you thinking the same options that you have in the budget that you'd like to just have full year column?
That's the thought. In reality, my only concern is we may not be going out past 2 years for recommendations. So I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on how valuable it'd be, but Sometimes
And
it'd
you
be
can
nice to see.
certainly, you can create, as soon as you put something into Q1 of a new year, it'll fill out that year, right? So you could build this out to scroll for days to the right. Not that I'm recommending that, but you could do that. So this will keep growing to the right. But at that point, yeah, if you had more than 3 years worth of recommendations, you would want to see it in your view. Otherwise, it's just so many columns. I think if my guess would be if that becomes a use case where people have just too much on the screen, that we would contemplate that. So if you find yourself bumping into it, let us know.
Is there any plan to try to bring the budget items into a Kanban board like this so that we have recommendations and budget spending both visible here? I know that's not a simple thing, and I don't even know exactly what I think it would look like, but presenting yesterday, we went over all the budget and IT debt stuff, and then we talked about all the recommendations, and there was this missing gap of like, I want to see them both together in this planning view.
Yeah. So we hadn't, only because I think, you could grab all those workstations in a budget item and put them on a recommendation and force them there. But I'd be curious to know what that might look like. Because you don't want too many things, right? The Kanban boards are beautiful while you've got 8 in a column and 4 columns. And then it goes like mayhem from there and you're scrolling for days.
I agree. I said I wanted it. I said I wanted you to
Yeah, you want me to solve that for you?
figure out how.
Perfect. I'll let you know if I come up with something. You know what? You'll put it in our heads and maybe somebody will come up with something. We talked about like telescoping folders, right? So that it just came up as a single line item that would maybe expand, because some like those Kanban boards do just get really unwieldy if you've got more than 15 things in a column. So I'll ask about it. We're always looking for ideas to improve the budget view for sure.
Yeah, maybe towards that, even if there's the ability to put all of the technology debt total value at the top of the column, and then the contract total for that period. So then you can, in theory, total up all of those and see if I start moving recommendations around, what is my total for that budget going to look like?
Yep. I get that.
Now, with that, if we could also remove some of those numbers that are shown there because they're misleading. Like the one thing we calculate is it looks like you guys go out like 12 or 13 years for the reoccurring total value. And it just throws off the numbers.
That's what, so I already have that note because I think that's, Greg, isn't that what you were talking about earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Whereas right now you'd have to limit it in the recommendation itself for this view. I wrote down bracketed contract recommendation dates so that we could, to control for that. Oh, so Alex, that is not a silly ask for an easy customizable cover page for a report. There are a couple things that we want to do with Report Builder. One of which is to make a exec summary that's more component driven, so you wouldn't have to do screenshots. So you too, Jeff, have a good one. So when we have those dashboard tiles, one of the things we'd like to be able to do is pull single tiles into an exec summary, so you don't have to take screenshots into an exec summary. And that same idea would probably help with a cover page, so that you could easily add the client logo to the cover page, for example. So we definitely have contemplated that one. I don't think that'll be Q4, but I think we will. Yeah, I think we will get to that for sure. Curious if anybody has a favorite. Don, when I first read that, I read, agree, that's an idea. And I thought, oh, that's not a good sign. Like, it's just an idea. That's like saying, do I look too fat in these pants? Nope, just the right fat. So, okay, glad it's a good idea. Anything from the last release that you are already using and glad that it came out. I just like giving positive feedback to the product team when I go back and give them 9 more ideas.
Kanban board of the recommendations is a significant game change.
Awesome.
And that's huge. It's been fantastic.
All the updates to the way that the risk data is presented has been
Oh,
great
the
to
new
me.
reporting.
Yeah, just be able to look at those maturity models in the different formats, I think has been great.
Awesome.
I have a question kind of wrapped around that now that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
When I present that data, I usually scroll to the bottom and I start with all the green, right? Which is not a big deal. However, it's interesting to think about it reformatting and starting with the green versus starting with the red. I can go ahead.
My one thought is you could add the item detail template twice. Right, so we add the first one. Let me just grab a default assessment.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, so just grab the green ones, right?
Yeah, yeah, right on.
and
That
then
makes
that's-
perfect sense.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
No, there are a lot of buttons to click, right? So it's like, this is how everybody gets new ideas. As a matter of fact,
Yep.
it was on this call when William talked about, like, I sometimes show all the green and say, this is what your managed service agreement, your monthly MRR gets you all of this all the time. And so that, I don't think I would have come up with this solution if I didn't know that that's how he presented it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great insight.
Awesome. Well, I think that is, just for a second, I thought I hadn't recorded this and I was in a panic. So you all were going to have to stay for another 47 minutes while I ran through it again and interacted. But whew, all right, I did. So you're all safe and I can let you go about your weekend. How was that? All right. Well, you always know how to get us. So thanks for joining. Next week, Alex is in 7 Figure in Orlando, and they're talking through, they've got a couple interesting activities, one of which is an accountability matrix. And so next week, Alex is going to kind of share some highlights from that and lessons learned, or maybe what not to wear, what to wear. You never know.
With me, it's going to be what not to wear, but there is a Halloween costume contest, so all bets are off. But yeah, we'll be talking next week about accountability, especially between what are you accountable for? What are your customers accountable for? What are third-party vendors accountable for? What are shared accountabilities looking like? And how does that impact you? And how can you communicate it to your customers? So it'll be interesting.
All right. Well, with that, we'll let everybody get about their business. Enjoy the weekend. Some of us enjoyed 2 weeks off. And we'll see you when you get back. I'm sure you'll subscribe to our YouTube and watch us while you are.
Absolutely. I'll check.
Make sure you watch us on vacation.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'll be doing.
That is what we expect.
All right.
Okay.
Take care, guys.
Jeff, I'll send it your way too. Jim and Jeff, I got you. I'm taking notes.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ed.
Yep.
Everybody have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.